Hey everybody, Chris Bryant here with a CCNP route and T-shoot video exam and a little bit of lab work to go with it called Nortred! I didn't want to yell it because I don't want the workspace cat to start tearing stuff up. So we're going to go with that. Now if you already know what Nortred is, you know, extra credit to you, definitely some kudos on that. But stick around because I got some lab work for you here I think you'll enjoy as well. Here's today's question. And scenario, actually, you're configuring away on OSPF and you get this message. And it looks pretty ominous. I know ominous, and this looks ominous. Nortred, OSPF1 process cannot start. Now, which of the following do you need to do to make that process startable? And I want you to choose all of them that apply. I don't like those either, but we got to do them. It's good practice. A, be sure that you have at least one IP address assigned to an interface on that router, whether it's virtual or physical. B, an IP address must be configured on a physical interface. A logical interface won't do. C, an IP address must be present on a logical interface for that whole RID thing we know about. And D, the interface or interfaces with the IP address or addresses must be up. If they're shut down, that just won't do. So we're going a little beyond the old, what's the one thing that might be causing this? We have to know exactly what kind of address might resolve this issue. So let's go ahead and jump right into the lab work. And here's our router, and unbelievably, by the strangest of coincidences, there are no IP addresses on this router. So what we're going to do is go ahead and try to start OSPF. And your first hint that there's a bit of a problem is you get that R1 config message right there. You notice where it just goes to the config, the second prompt, and it doesn't say config router. So a second or so later, and usually it doesn't take that long, it's almost instantaneous generally, we get this message, Nortred, OSPF4 Nortred, OSPF process 1 cannot start. Well, this question was a little bit harder because I cut out some of the message. But there is a moral to this story at this point, believe it or not. And that moral is, sooner or later, you're going to see debug output that you're not familiar with. You're going to see log messages that you're not familiar with. And it might be in a bad situation, like not being able to start OSPF. So you just have to remain calm. It's okay to inwardly panic for a moment, okay? We all do this. Ah, crap. What is this? But you can't show it if there's anybody else in the room. And then you just have to shrug it off and say, okay, what information am I being given? And here we are being told after that the process cannot start. There must be at least one up IP interface for OSPF to use as the router ID. So where one of the question choices did kind of go along with, mention the RID, that's it can be either the physical or the logical. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And let's go ahead and just put an IP address on, whoops, interface 00 here. Zing, there we go. And now, well, I went to router OSPF 21. And notice that we're being told process 21 can't start, etc. So what's the problem here? Administratively down. And I know you're a CCNPer. If you're not one now, if you're studying for it, I know you're going to get there. But we have to remember these little tiny things like this we learned back in our CCENT and CCNA studies. It's administratively down. So what do we have to do? We've got to do a no shut. So spell config T right, that would work nicely. So we will let that cook for a moment, so to speak. And we've got our line protocol coming up. Our physical interface is already up. And we're going to go ahead and try. Let's try process 1 again. And this time you see config-router come out. When you see that, you know your problems are over. But going back to the choices we had for this question, we know that D is correct because the router even told us that. The interface or interfaces with the IP address must be up. If they're shut down, as we saw, that's not going to work out for us. But it does not matter whether it's a physical interface or a logical interface that's up. and has an IP address, but you got to have one or the other. If you don't have any IP addresses on the routers we saw, you're not going to be able to proceed with OSPF. Thanks so much for taking today's video practice exam. If I could have your attention for just a moment. Here in April, we're doing another fund drive for the Central Virginia Food Bank. $10 from every student enrollment in the CCNP 2014 all-in-one camp is going to go straight to the food bank. When we launch our new website here shortly, we'll write them a check, and it's going to be right there on the front. And for the individual CCNP route, switch, and T-shoot courses, which are $44 each, we're going to contribute $5 from every sale of those to the food bank. This is a time of year the food banks are hurting a little bit because people tend to give it the holidays when they're thinking about it, and that's great. But we don't tend to think about it in April or May or June as the summer rolls around. But hunger is year-round for a lot of people, and we here at TBA, with your help, are doing something about it. Thanks so much for taking the time to take today's video practice exam, and I will see you shortly with another one. Take care.